Greetings and salutations, Scribblers. I'm Katie, the CEO and founder of the Scribblers Den, where writing craft meets writing community. I'm so glad that you've joined us for another writing craft video. Today, we're going to talk about what you're reading and the effect it can have on your writing, specifically how it's important to read outside of the genre that you write. I am a fantasy reader. It's my go-to if I want to reread a book, and it's a genre that I'm most likely to walk out of a bookstore carrying. I write fantasy, so it's important that I read in my genre. This lets me study and be aware of genre expectations, and it can even influence my thoughts to ask deeper questions about our world or what might happen if. And then I get to fill in the blank with some cool, fantastical idea that involves magic and cool creatures. But at the same time, I have to make sure it isn't stifling my creativity or making me feel like I'm in an echo chamber between the books I'm writing and the books I'm reading. So for me and a lot of other writers, we do like to push our boundaries, and our goal for our writing is to evolve, right? Whatever that looks like. If you're only feeding your creativity with one genre, it's likely that you'll get stuck one day. You'll start to feel like you're just rewriting the same thing, like there's nothing new or novel about your writing. And this is where reading outside your genre can be a lifesaver. So since choosing to focus on my writing with the goal of publishing, I've increased my reading sphere, and it has done wonders for my writing. By reading more romance books, I've been able to hone my craft in creating romantic tension. By reading autobiographies, I've learned more about human nature and how different events have lifelong implications on people. I've also learned that I really love autobiographies. I especially love listening to them when they're read by the author, because you get that emotion and power of their voice behind their stories. And that is a really powerful storytelling tool to study, and it's fascinating, right? Reading thrillers and mysteries, one of my least read genres, I was able to learn more about how to set up clues so that my characters figure things out, and how to use red herrings to really push my readers in the wrong direction. Basically, whatever is at the heart of another genre is something I can generally apply to my fantasy books, and actively seeking those out and reading them allows me to be more diversified as a reader and to create more complex stories. I've had so many writers tell me that they don't read outside their genre, and it just makes me sad every time. Not only are you potentially missing out on like fantastic novels, you're not giving yourself the chance to realize your own potential. Reading widely can also give you inspiration to combine genres and create something entirely new and unexpected. A great example of this is the television show Firefly. It took the premise of, what if we set a Western in space? And they just ran with it. And it's so brilliant. It's so good. And I think that the fact that there's only one season. Oh, hello, Oat Milk. She has joined us for our video. Excellent. Blessed by the cat. So not only is it just such a great example of mixing genres and having it be so amazing, but there's also a really good Firefly spin-off novel written by Rosie Thor that you should totally buy or get from your local library. All right, so when you start thinking about this, you have to think about what other genres you could maybe smash together. So right now, Romantasy is having a great moment in publishing, and all because authors said they wanted fantasy, but with a bigger emphasis on those romance elements. So they adhere to both, and readers really love it. In the end, reading widely will make you a better writer, not only because you're getting inspiration and input from diverse sources, but because you're going to be exposed to even more writing styles, which will give you more books to analyze, what you like and don't like. And from there, you can apply that to your own writing to keep developing your own writer's voice. It all comes together, right? So please tell me in the comments what you write, the genre you like to read that's different from what you write. And please be sure to check out the Scribblers Den website to learn more about our writing coaches, our developmental editing options, and our amazing writing retreat that we are hosting in June over in beautiful Clearville, Pennsylvania. So thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Happy writing, Scribblers.